ARC, is to have a presentation from one of our flagship institutions leading up to the policy roundtable, which is now scheduled at 1 p.m. So I'm pleased to invite for this one a presentation from the African Development Bank. As I mentioned to you, it ended up becoming the first ever African stakeholder to support our senior policy seminar. So I'm going to turn this over to Chidozie, who happens to be, by the way, another ARC alumnus. I think he was in my group, Group C. And then Tilahun, the chief economist of the East African region, will be making the presentation. Yep.
Thank you, Lemon. And good morning to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And before we go on, I wish to appreciate our very senior colleagues from ADB who are here. By the left is a person that used to be what we call second in command in the entire African Development Bank. That's Madam Franny. She's here with us. And then we also have a longtime executive director who also served as advisor to our president. That's Governor Fundanga, who is here with us. And then our office, the position of chief economist, was really brought to limelight by our own Kaskende, who is also here, and also, will I say, a product or a long-time partner of AERC in different dimensions. So our presentation will be brief. Tilahun will run you through our regional integration program, and then given whatever time that is left, I can tell you what we do in terms of how you can get some cash from ADB. Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to be here. I also will make sure that I will be very brief because I'll be very brief.
Speak up.
Hello, hear me?
You touch the table.
Yeah, nice working. I'll be very brief for the sake of time. My name is Tilahun Temesgen. I'm the Chief Regional Economist for the African Development Bank based in Nairobi. The purpose of the presentation is to give you a highlight of our regional integration strategy framework at a corporate level, and also the regional integration strategy paper that we are preparing to operationalize the bank-wide regional integration framework into the Eastern African context. I'll start with a brief about the regional context first. Let me give you a brief background about the regional context. The regional department based in Nairobi covers about 13 countries, so it's different from the EAC. In addition to the EAC member countries, we have about 7 countries. The East Africa Regional Bureau also covers a number of diverse countries, 5 landlocked countries, and coastal areas that are providing access to sea for these landlocked countries. We have also 2 island economies, Seychelles and Comoros, and we have also a number of about 5 of which is of global nature is the upturn in commodity prices and the positive FDI outlook. While within the region there are also a number of opportunities, including the stable public infrastructure spending, the mineral oil and natural gas discoveries in the Eastern Africa, the recovery from the 27 drought, and strong domestic demand from the emerging middle class. We have also other opportunities in terms of regional integration via the EAC and COMESA, the tripartite arrangement, which has been signed in 2015, with the potential for improved intra-regional trade. However, the African Development Bank has taken regional integration seriously as part of its way forward. And then we have done a regional integration strategy paper we just completed, and we have done a completion report for it. And I just would like to take you through some of the key lessons. Some of the key lessons that are based on our completion report and the regional integration strategy papers and the evaluation by the independent evaluation of the bank include the bank has considerable strength in financing hard infrastructure, but we found out that to have a higher impact, we need to complement it with investment in soft infrastructure. This is in line with what we discussed yesterday. Multiple RECs membership continues to be a major challenge, and access to markets and recurring non-tariff trade barriers are also among the major challenges that are preventing regional integration from going forward. We have also key soft governance challenges such as poor trade facilitation and legal and regulatory frameworks that are not clearly defined and very strong. We also found out that infrastructure is critical for sustainable growth and inclusive development in the African context. However, over the last few years, fixed capital formation, which is a proxy for physical infrastructure, has not been growing sufficiently. So there is infrastructure financing gap that should be completed. So with all this, the bank approved a regional integration strategy framework last week with 3 major pillars. First one is power and infrastructure investment, support to trade and investment, and the third one is financial integration. Now, this is the corporate level regional integration strategy framework which we wanted to operationalize for the region. In preparing our regional integration strategy paper based on the regional integration strategy framework at the corporate level, we have some selectivity criteria where we wanted to first align it with the bank level strategy, but we also wanted to align it with the regional integration and industrialization strategies of the relevant regional economic communities. We also wanted to incorporate the lessons learned to date and also inputs from stakeholders, including you from based on the discussion we're going to have today. So this is, I think, a very golden opportunity for us to take your views. So the overarching objective of the regional integration strategy paper is to foster an integrated and diversified Eastern Africa region which is capable of generating sustained and inclusive growth. And we are identifying 3 major pillars. First one is what we call it thematic support area 1, which is supporting regional infrastructure development, specifically focusing on energy, road, and ICT, as well as water and sanitation infrastructure. Second one is thematic support area 2, which is strengthening the policy and institutional support from the private sector window will complement the public sector window. In the 3 pillars, we also wanted to support regional member countries and institutions through the promotion of public-private partnership, because we said that infrastructure gap and infrastructure financing gap, as well as services, are very huge, and this cannot be completely covered by public investment. So there is a need for enhancing public-private partnership and looking at other alternative financing mechanisms. So under this private sector window, the bank also will support technology and skills transfer development, entrepreneurship, research and development, and assist in establishing business corridors. So I think the main point is at the area of dialogue, we would like to make sure that there is a coherence between regional and national operations. Elimination of non-trade barriers are among the major issues to be covered, and improving the regional operations portfolio performance. And we also would like to dialogue to ensure progress on the negotiations of the tripartite with the private sector, with civil society, and all other stakeholders. So what are the takeaways from the last 2 days for our regional integration strategy paper, today and yesterday? The two pillars, in my view, are very much in line with the discussions directly, and the third pillar implicitly. I think there is a need to ensure coherence between national and regional priorities, capacity development, and also policy harmonization for effective natural resource management and value addition are important ingredients to enhance regional integration. So, the final point that I would like to make is, now based on this quick presentation, I would like to get your thoughts on the proposed pillars, the 3 pillars that are, whether they are in line with your thinking, whether they are also priorities in your area of expertise. These are, again, investment on regional infrastructure, support to trade and investment, and financial sector integration. Whether the new preparation criteria is also in line with your thinking, and what are the potential areas of collaboration and support proposed to enhance implementation of regional integration in the region. And we'd like to know whether we are learning the right lessons so far, based on the discussions we had yesterday and today. And also, overall, we'd like to get your feedback and thoughts and lessons in the area of regional integration as the senior policymakers in the continent and in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Tilahun. So you have presented your East African regional integration strategy, and then you concluded with 2 pillars, and you want input. Maybe Chidozie, can you kind of follow up on his presentation then before we open up?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I understand the time is limited, so I have a full-fledged PowerPoint, but I may not run through it systematically. I'll just summarize a few points, especially as it relates to our operations and how it links up with what we are doing, either at the regional integration level, at your national level. But one thing I need to say is that regional integration is at the core of our business. We support it, we appreciate it, and indeed, we try to go the extra mile of giving countries incentives to finance regional integration projects. For instance, the way we work in ADB, we have 3 broad windows, 3 sources of our funding. One is the core ADB, which is more of a market-based financing. The second one is ADF, African Development Fund, which is a soft window where you can borrow almost free. So then the other one is the Nigeria Trust Fund, which is available for countries to also finance projects. What we do is that every period of 3 years when we do a strategy, whether regional strategy like the one he's doing, or strategy for each country, then we define the envelope available for that country for operations. In addition, we then do say that if any country chooses to use part of the money in its envelope to finance a project that is on regional integration, then we go the extra mile of matching it. In other words, you put 10 million on regional integration, not from your money, from the ADB money pre-allocated for you, your country. You now say out of it, $10 million for regional integration project. We bring another $10 million to match it, just to show you how much we support regional integration. Now, one point I need to make here again, like we pointed out yesterday, is that countries the money we allocate to countries is based on the performance of that country, which is derived from what we call country portfolio and institutional assessment, to see how good you are at managing both our portfolio and reforms. And within that context, regional integration is singled out one strong element, such that any country that is moving forward in terms of implementing policies agreed within the regional integration body, like COMESA or ECOWAS or SADC, then that country is perceived to be scoring high on that. So the point here I wish to emphasize is that when a country has agreed to be a member of a regional integration body, like say COMESA, and within COMESA they have also agreed, say, okay, common external tariff. Then if you pull back as an individual country, having not acceded to it, then the perception is that you're not playing along with others and you are being penalized on the CPIA. So which relates to the issue I was saying, if we know you don't want to get there, why do you agree to go there? So if we're committed to go to any length of regional integration, then we should get there. Otherwise, let's not bite more than we can chew, so that we don't penalize ourselves. Having said that, in terms of regional integration projects, what we finance are mainly infrastructure projects. Road, electricity, because some countries, especially in East Africa now, are exporting electricity, which is good. When you overproduce, you export. So the way it goes is that even though it is called regional integration projects, it's not the regional integration bodies that borrow money from us. It is the individual government who still borrow money to finance up to the end of their own share of the assets. If it's a road project, you borrow up to the cost of financing it to your border. The other country borrows to the same border, and probably you share the cost of financing the common border. So the liability is still on individual countries in terms of regional integration. So to say that it's not the regional integration bodies that really have to drive this process. If individual countries are not committed, we are not going to be making much progress. Having said that on operation, in brief, on the side of knowledge where I really work now, I used to be in Tanzania and operations at the head office. So we have a few knowledge products, one of which is research. In fact, I was asking Chris just a few minutes ago, how come we've not been hearing much of him? Because Chris Adams is an African by all content. So he just told me that he's part of the current, AEO, which we are doing. So we also support think tanks, one of which is AERC, and Lemon has mentioned in the morning about it. So we don't have the capacity to go and manage individual programs in the 54 African countries. So what we do is to take up eligible, strong think tanks and support for implementation. And not just AERC or ACBF, where we have big operations. Individual national think tanks represented here, depending on the nature of programs or projects we have, we can also collaborate with you. And interestingly also, let me mention, my division is in charge of the DB library, where we are strongly promoting e-knowledge, virtual knowledge, such that we will find a way to link up both through the regional integration bodies and to national bodies that have got to do with knowledge management. And finally, one thing we do strongly is capacity building in terms of project implementation. So if you happen to be in any of these organizations that have our projects, whether COMESA or SADC or ECOWAS, then we wish to, and we want to support you in terms of the capacity of those managing those projects. So if any is here and wants us to discuss about it, fine after this, but that's one thing we do strongly, both at national level and then at regional integration level, to support anybody that is involved in implementing regional integration body to ensure that we realize the objectives in Africa. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So as you can see for this session, there's no external chair. So I'm going to take over and then follow through the same procedure starting, we're going to open up for questions and audience participation. So AFDB, as you know, is one of our flagship institutions. We have two individuals, one from the head office, another one from the regional. And they have regional integration strategy and also, I guess, Africa-wide integration strategy, both in knowledge and also capacity building. So now you have a chance to actually put them on trial, you know. So let's think of this as a jury, an African jury, including senior policymakers. It doesn't have to be questions. You can actually make commenters. So why don't we begin with this section. Any questions, comments? Yes, Emmanuel? Sorry.
Since nobody else is asking questions, I'll ask mine. Now, I was interested that when you talk about East Africa, you're talking not about the EAC and you're not talking about COMESA, but you're talking about your own definition of East Africa. You then said that you don't need to work through the regional organizations. So I was just wondering, is that an explicit choice? Or do you sometimes work through the organizations, or do you prefer to work outside the organizations? So there's a bit, I want to know more about the relationship between your regional integration work and the regional organizations. And the second one, just related, is you said that actually so your infrastructure projects depend on member states taking a share of the burden. And I wonder, just in terms of project pipeline, yesterday we talked about national interests not always actually being towards the regional goal. So I just wondered, do you have a lot of demand from pairs of countries coming requesting support to build these cross-border infrastructure, or is that something that you're actually having to sort of promote and try and encourage? Thank you.
Okay, anyone on this side? Anyone else on this side? Yes, please. Please introduce yourselves.
Thank you, Professor Sandet. My name is Emmanuel Ukwe. I'm a minister in the Nigerian High Commission here in Kampala. I want the last presenter, to throw more light, because I don't think when many people are aware of the three portfolios through which the African Development Bank supports and sponsors projects among the member countries. The issue of Nigerian Trust Fund. I don't know how many of our members in the continent know that Nigeria is playing this kind of role of adding a third portfolio or sponsoring, which is Nigerian Government Fund, the Nigerian Trust Fund. If we could throw more light on that so that this audience will benefit from it. Thank you.
Okay, anyone on this session again? So I'll move to the middle. Yes, Ambassador.
Hello, yes. My question, there are two questions. The first one is, how do you evaluate the progress in terms of regional integration? Because at the level of the bank, how do you evaluate the progress in terms of regional integration in Africa? And the second thing which is related is, do you have any products which are biased, the products that you are selling, which are biased in terms of regional integration? Because I know you have individual countries coming to you, and then you've got, should you develop these types of products that would really promote regional integration, which are biased towards regional integration in Africa? Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on the, yes, Louis.
thanks Lema, and I thank the two presenters of this strategy. My interest is on PPPs, public-private partnerships. We looked at them in the in 2005, 6, 7 as a potential source of financing of regional projects. I would like them to share the experience of AFDB in PPPs. And the reason I'm raising this is that in a number of countries, the private sector is seeking several guarantees from government that when you fully analyze the proposal, you are actually looking at a public project. There are guarantees on any default, guarantees on demand, guarantees on repair, but everything is guaranteed by government. So the risk sharing that one sees in PPPs is not in sync with what we had originally, that this will be a critical source of financing for regional projects.
Okay, thank you. Please also introduce.
I'm Boubacar from Mali. I really appreciate the support of the African Development Bank to a strong think tank. I don't know what do we mean by strong think tank, but please allow me to invite the African Development Bank to support, mainly in fragile countries, strategic studies group. It will be a very good thing, particularly in these countries. Governments are experiencing many financial difficulties. So the support of African Development Bank is welcome. Thank you so much.
Oui, bonjour, moi je suis Dr Elhadji Gueye. Je viens du Sénégal et je suis enseignant-chercheur au niveau du CESAC. Alors, tout à l'heure, au regard des interventions, surtout l'intervention de la Banque africaine de développement, une question a émergé tout à l'heure sur l'évaluation du processus d'intégration. Je reviens sur effectivement l'intérêt de cette évaluation pour la simple raison, dans les discussions depuis hier, on n'a pas su comprendre les effets de cette intervention, de ces intégrations sur la population bénéficiaire. Parce qu'en réalité, l'intégration bénéficie qui? Effectivement, nous parlons du développement, mais les bénéficiaires en tant que tels, est-ce qu'ils sont impliqués dans la prise de décision de l'intégration? Et là, je voudrais savoir, à votre niveau, au niveau de la Banque africaine de développement, les évaluations qui sont faites, est-ce qu'il y a une intégration dans ces évaluations, les populations bénéficiaires de cette intégration? Merci.
Je m'appelle Ahmad Akeli de Mauritanie, Action pour l'éducation et le développement. Ma question s'adresse au dernier orateur, surtout en matière de renforcement des capacités. Je voudrais savoir à quel niveau se situe l'action de la BAD au niveau de la coopération universitaire en Afrique. C'est là où peut-être qu'on pourrait agir pour transformer la future élite africaine. À quel niveau se situe l'appui de la BAD au milieu universitaire? Je vous remercie.
Okay, on the last section, Fanny, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I want to congratulate my brothers from the African Development Bank for their presentation, and perhaps use this opportunity with my other hat to speak about one entity that the bank is supporting, which is a regional bank, the Trade and Development Bank, and to use this as an opportunity to ask a question so you can explain to the participants how this leveraging takes place. So I'm a special advisor to the president of the Trade and Development Bank, and it's a bank that serves the COMESA countries. It's a purely commercial bank owned by member states and others, including the pension funds across Africa. The governors of central banks in Africa have put money into the bank. And it shows a good opportunity how the African Development Bank pushes regional integration initiatives. The African Development Bank is a shareholder in the Trade and Development Bank, so it's holding a commercial support into that entity, but also works in parallel when countries identify regional integration projects, blending its finance with the finance of the Trade and Development Bank and crowding in other investments. But the third area is through ancillary support in policy work and capacity building. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to ask Dr. Chido and Tilahun to explain how the bank does this in other regions and what are the opportunities in the new strategy, particularly around supporting the industrial and SME clusters, the agribusinesses and industrial parks that are serving broader regions under Pillar 2. And then the second part I wanted to also share is on the PPP side, because through the Trade and Development Bank, for example, we support investments in countries that are guaranteed through private insurance. So it's really leveraging the private financial markets to support beyond just the commercial funding, but also through the insurance industries, through the guarantee industry, and perhaps even more interesting, through the local currency and domestic capital markets. So this whole financial sector pillar that you presented as an opportunity for regional integration, given that many of the people in this seminar are coming from central banks, from ministries of finance and planning, if you could explain more how your strategy is going to go into support through the financial sector pillar beyond the traditional sort of direct financing instruments that the bank has. Thank you.
I'll just take one question, and then we have to get back to our presenters. We only have 10 minutes left. So anyone who has a burning desire to ask a question or make a comment. Okay, please.
Merci, professeur Lema, de me passer la parole. Je m'appelle Faisal Abdoulaye du Cameroun. Je suis en charge de la politique fiscale au ministère des Finances. Alors, je voudrais partager une interrogation, notamment sur l'apport de la fiscalité, ou plus précisément de l'harmonisation fiscale dans le processus d'intégration, notamment dans la région de l'Afrique de l'Est. L'expérience de cette région a été présentée comme relevant des bonnes pratiques. Quel rôle a pu jouer dans l'approfondissement de l'intégration dans cette région-là? Quel rôle a pu jouer la fiscalité? Est-ce qu'aujourd'hui, les législations fiscales des États membres de cette sous-région ont été harmonisées? Parce que, revenant un peu à l'expérience de l'Afrique centrale, nous avons pu déjà harmoniser les législations en matière d'impôt sur le revenu, en matière de taxes sur la valeur ajoutée, des droits d'accise, mais nous avons le sentiment que cette harmonisation n'a pas accéléré le processus d'intégration au niveau de la sous-région Afrique centrale. Quelle est donc l'expérience en Afrique de l'Est? Est-ce que la fiscalité a joué un rôle essentiel dans l'intégration économique dans cette sous-région? Merci.
Thank you. I'll now come back to the presenters. I think a lot of questions were addressed to the headquarters. So, Chidozie, you're on the hot seat. So you don't really have to answer all the questions. You group them into maybe two or three, and then respond. And we need to be brief because we're running a little bit late. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, starting from Brice, not Emmanuel, please. The issue in terms of the relationship, let me clarify it. If a project is a national project, every nation can come to ADB, borrow a project for a project and finance it. Now, when it's a regional integration project, it means it involves more than one country. So the starting point is often a regional integration body is on the driving seat to relate with ADB, liaise with the countries involved, and so that it becomes kind of one project. But in terms, since what we give is actually loan, the actual signing of the loan and the liability goes to individual countries to the extent of their own share of the project. So the regional integration body is needed to drive it and to relate with us. But individual countries will bear the liabilities because COMESA, for instance, cannot come and borrow. It's not a legal entity to that extent. So that's actually the relationship. And my brother from Nigeria, Honorable Minister, as I mentioned briefly, yes, most people know about ADB and then ADF. Some don't even know of ADF because it's our internal air business. The one we call NTF, Nigeria Trust Fund, like you say, we are three arms through which you can come and borrow. And then because you can come and they tell you there's no more funds for you. So NTF is the one Nigeria gave to Africa. Say this fund is available to any country that needs it to finance a project. You borrow and pay back at just a minimal interest. So it's a third window through which projects are financing. And I believe most ministers of finance know about it, but for those who don't know, they could look forward to it to finance the operations. I think Tilahun will talk on this evaluation side of our business. And in terms of what Ambassador Janki was asking us to, do we have preferred areas that fly very fast, biased areas? Presently, ADB seems to be biased in terms of what we call high five. In other words, 5 areas to distinguish our operations. One is energy. 2 is not in any order, agriculture. We're talking about Feed Africa. Then 3, industrialization. 4, improving the quality of life. And then 5, regional integration. So any project that fits into regional integration. So if you are talking in terms of being biased, yes, any project that falls within this context is our preference, and we run with it. Dr. Kasakende, and on the issue of PPP, of course, you know as much as we do on ADB. One thing I need to add is that one product we have now, which seems to facilitate these processes, is guarantee, credit guarantee. So we deliver it now as a full-fledged product. So if there's any project, even if we are not financing, we can come in there and provide a guarantee for that project, such that if it fails, then to the extent of our guarantee, whether it's partial guarantee, then we take it up. So that's one way that this PPP can be pushed forward. We may not have had so much experience in terms of some of this direct. There will be just a few, but guarantee is one way to encourage those who are financing it to be sure that the risk is reduced by investing in Africa on that note. And probably Tilahun will also deal with this issue of fragile countries, whether we have anything to do with it. Our brother Ahmadu, on universities, of course, improving the quality of life has to do with education. Financing universities, most universities in Africa, unfortunately, yes, unfortunately, are owned by governments. I remember I have engaged Lema with a discussion on this as this AERC, we are not seeing presence of private universities. Any of us that wants to go to America for university, when you count, starting with the so-called Ivy League, when you count all of them, they are private universities. So for a private university, we can give you a loan to develop the university. We're already doing a few. We finance that. And for public one, that means you have to go through government because you are not a legal entity to come and borrow from us. But in terms of capacity building, most often we can't deal with all the universities in Africa. So we use AERC, African Capacity Building Foundation, and other think tanks to reach out to you. That's the way we operate. And our Franny, on SMEs in terms of what we do and so on, I think it still hasn't much changed from the way you left it. But what we do increasingly is this issue of on lending. There are so many banks, financial institutions in Africa. So what we still do, you on-lend to them, to now on-lend to SMEs, to industrial clusters. And I know there's much interest in industrial clusters from the suppliers of funds. I know Afrexim Bank is very eager on it, but often you see that the policy element from the national governments to really bring it to the platform of receiving lending is not strong, is not there. So that is one area we're willing, especially now if it has to do with agriculture and whatever. I mean, we'll be glad to finance it directly. I think I will stop here, and my colleague will cover the rest. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's very. I'm going to just ask one question, Tilahun. I think it came from Bruce, otherwise known as Emmanuel. Okay. I mean, we've been talking. Anyway, so I think you implied that you have this East African integration strategy, and there's no overlap between like EAC, this integration type states, and your definition of East African region for AFDB. And then when you say that, I think it's broader numbers, right? But you're not talking about integrating those broader category of countries. Or are you talking like integration in general in East Africa? Is that for the entire set of countries in the administrative region of East Africa for AFDB?
Yeah. Thank you, Professor. Actually, let me start by saying a few words on what you just mentioned. Basically, the 13 African countries that are covered by the regional office in Nairobi are basically for administrative purposes, and that's basically we're thinking, when we think about regional integration strategy for the region, we're thinking of these diverse groups of people. That's why earlier I mentioned that this is a region which is composed of diverse group of countries, where some of them are fragile, some of them are island states, and some of them are landlocked. So we wanted to have a strategy which actually will look at the specific needs of each of these countries and address their concern. For landlocked countries, for example, the support that we try to provide will be enhancing infrastructure connectivity with the coastal areas. For island states, we wanted to facilitate their connection with the mainland Africa region. And so basically, we will look at the specific needs of each member country in the region. But when we do that, we'll have a two-pronged approach. We will deal with national governments in selection of national projects that will have a regional implication, for example. We also will be working with the regional economic communities, for example, with the EAC, with COMESA, and of course, in general, with the tripartite. For example, earlier we had a capacity building pillar in the previous regional integration strategy paper, and basically in that one, we were working with the COMESA as a project implementation unit. So that's the idea. I think let me also add with what Chidozie said, responding to Franny's questions. In the third pillar, basically the support is to look at cross-cutting foundation, which includes investing in hard and soft infrastructure that will enhance financial sector development and efficiency of the financial sector to mobilize savings into investment in regional integration projects. For example, that will help us to unleash the role of the regional financial sector. And the support will also include infrastructure development for payment systems. For example, we have a project that is being implemented by the East African community, which looks at enhancing the infrastructure of the payment systems and of course the related policy areas. Our support also will include to support the financial institutions directly through a private sector window, for example, through the lines of credit to banks that will be on lent to enhance investment in infrastructure. And of course, PPP also is considered as one potential option, and we're also thinking of mobilizing non-traditional financial resources into investment in infrastructure, again through PPPs. In terms of PPPs, the bank is now supporting a number of countries through capacity building for the PPP nitty-gritty. Basically, first we did an assessment of the needs and gaps in legal, regulatory, and institutional frameworks, and we designed some training, sometimes 1 week, 2 week trainings for PPP practitioners, and take them through the whole cycle of a PPP project. One question that was asked about the evaluation of regional integration. Basically, as I said earlier, we had a regional integration strategy framework that was completed in 2016, and we have an independent evaluation department which did the assessment based on a number of criteria, such as relevance of the regional integration strategy to support countries, and whether there has been an impact, and so on and so forth. And one of the key findings was that, yes, out of the two prior pillars, which is infrastructure, regional infrastructure, and capacity building, the assessment found out that the bank has done quite a remarkable job in its investment in hard infrastructure. However, it was also told that to have a better impact and higher impact on the ground, those hard infrastructure investments should have been accompanied by soft infrastructure, and on the way forward, each and every hard infrastructure will be basically accompanied or complemented by soft infrastructure issues, such as trade facilitation and so on and so forth, one-stop border posts and so on. But however, the other thing on the second pillar, which is capacity building, compared to the demand, both at the regional economic communities and national authorities level, we have not really done that much. Not because the bank hasn't done much, but because the demand and the gap has been so high. So that lesson is also taken into account in the development of the new regional integration strategy paper. And also in terms of, again, in terms of measuring, okay, so in terms of also measuring the impact of regional integration, I was referring to the African Regional Integration Index that is being prepared every year, which compares the different regional economic communities and the blocks, which looks at financial integration, which looks at infrastructure integration and trade integration, and then there's also a composite index for each regional bloc, where the last report has found that East African community has been the major and most integrated regional bloc in the continent. Thank you.
Thank you, Chidozie, Tilahun. Very informative presentation. A show of hands for the AFDB team. But I thought that there were a couple of things that came up which were relevant to ARC, and I'm going to weigh in. One has to do with universities. The second has to do with forced conflict, fragile states, and the third is Nigeria Trust Fund. And I'm going to start with Nigeria Trust Fund. And ARC has been a beneficiary of Nigeria Trust Fund. And in fact, they are the first ones, again from Africa, which actually funded exchange fellows program. So we have now ARC researchers actually spending time interacting with policymakers, by the way, producing papers of quality. And we're very pleased about that. And also, since I'm on Nigeria, Nigeria has been with us and one of the largest beneficiaries, also size. And also, you know, some of our alumni have in fact transformed the banking industry. You know, Charles Ludo, and then Chidozie. You know, so there's a huge ARC footprint in Nigeria. I think the second is on universities. See, one thing that people do not quite appreciate is that ARC is not just a simple think tank. You know, it's really kind of, it's growing into something so hybrid, integrating knowledge, research, policy outreach, capacity building, network, it's all, and then graduate training over 40 universities. It's a very difficult organization to explain. There's nothing like ARC on this globe, nothing. Okay, and this is actually our biggest comparative advantage, and our biggest challenge is how do we communicate that. And a number of institutions, including ADB, use ARC to reach out to the rest of the region. By the way, we have been tweeting on this. I saw some interesting tweet yesterday. It has to do with success stories. What are the regional success stories in Africa? Somebody said ARC is an African regional integration. Okay. Yeah. So it's fascinating. That's why in the case of universities, since we have 3 collaborative degree program, master's, PhD, when ADB supports fragile and post-conflict space, both in knowledge generation and universities, you're actually doing dual, okay, in the current. So you may not be doing this directly, you're actually doing it, and it's been very, very useful. I think with this, I'm going to, fragile, I think, in fact, the current project, which is, by the way, the largest ever to ARC, and we're very pleased about this, focuses heavily on fragile and post-conflict space. And in capacity building, in training, and also research. And then, of course, universities. There are universities embedded there. So, and then I didn't even know that ADB was supporting TDB. I mean, that's another, yeah. And then TDB is also supporting ARC. TDB is also a founding member of the governance forum. By the way, also Nigeria. Nigeria is among the 12 central banks. Very happy about that. I think we are going to end this session with this, and then we'll go for lunch. We'll come back at 1 p.m. for the private-public policy roundtable. So maybe, like, I think the previous chairs always said we should have a show of hands for the audience, right? So we'll do that, and then we'll leave. Okay? Any announcements for, yeah.
Lunch is served where we had lunch yesterday, Citadel. We'll be back here at 1 o'clock, so let's try and rush. And then follow us on Twitter, and also make sure that you are, as you engage in social media, our hashtag is
Africa integration. So please engage as much as possible on social media, retweet. You can also tweet, and you can be assured that if you tweet, a lot of our colleagues will retweet. So kindly tweet as much as possible. So let's meet here at 1 o'clock. Lunch is served at Citadel, ground floor, where we had lunch yesterday. Thank you very much.